Welcome to the Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me today because we're tackling a topic that literally every single human being has wrestled with at some point. I'm talking about the universal and, let's be honest, often incredibly frustrating struggle of trying to make a lasting behavioral shift. You know the exact feeling, right? You set a resolution, you make a promise to yourself, you get incredibly motivated for, maybe 48 hours? And then you find yourself right back exactly where you started. But what if I told you there's an actual mechanical framework to why that happens, and more importantly, how to fix it? Let's get right into the source material and figure this whole thing out together.
So, why is it so hard to change? Seriously, just let that sink in for a second. It's completely maddening, isn't it? Sometimes our habits can feel like they're literally cemented into our DNA. We know what we should do, we know what we want to do, yet our behaviors simply refuse to break. Well, the text we're analyzing today strips away all the excuses and psychological jargon to answer this exact question. And the answer is refreshingly, almost brutally, simple.
Okay, let's dive into what we'll call the triad of transformation. According to our source text, every genuine change requires one of these three specific motivators. 1, self-awareness. 2, interaction with a righteous individual. Or 3, redirecting experiences. And what's absolutely crucial to understand here is that these aren't just polite suggestions. They are absolute prerequisites. Notice what isn't on this list? Pure willpower. Just gritting your teeth and trying harder isn't one of the genuine catalysts. If a behavioral shift is going to actually stick, it must be catalyzed by one of these three pathways. So let's break them down one by one and see how they actually operate in our everyday lives. All right, kicking things off with motivator 1, self-awareness.
Our source material notes something really fascinating about this first motivator. Out of the three, self-awareness is actually the easiest one to encounter. It's by far the most accessible. It's right there in front of us, happening every single day. And yet, it's the one we most frequently choose to completely ignore. Think about a weighing scale, or maybe a blood work report from your doctor. These aren't abstract philosophical concepts. These are visceral, undeniable pieces of data. When you step on that scale or look at those medical numbers, the text points out that it immediately shows you what needs to be done. The path forward is crystal clear. But here's the catch. The source also states that more often than not, people just look at that undeniable data, continue with their exact same habits, and then ultimately succumb to them. Why? Because seeing a bad blood test creates massive cognitive dissonance. Our brain instantly tries to protect our ego by rationalizing it away. We tell ourselves, oh, it's just water weight, or I just had a really stressful week. The data alone isn't enough if you don't actively override that defense mechanism.
Now, what's really brilliant about this concept is how it defines the people who actually succeed using this first motivator. The text says, those who really consider it as a wake-up call shape up to it rather than waiting for someone to guide. True self-awareness isn't just seeing the number on the scale. It's allowing that number to act as a giant, blaring, self-directed alarm bell. You don't wait around for a personal trainer. You don't wait for a mentor. You see the truth, you accept it, and you shape up. Moving right along to our second pathway, motivator 2, righteous interactions. But hey, what if self-awareness just isn't doing the trick for you? That leads us to the second method, which relies on an external force. It's incredibly powerful, but as we're about to see, it's also surprisingly rare. Think about how much content we consume constantly. We watch inspirational speeches, we read biographies, we listen to stories and videos of upright, righteous individuals. But the text makes a really bold claim here. Passive consumption does not change an individual. It's not true transformation. Why? Because watching a video just gives our brains a false dopamine hit. It gives us the illusion of accomplishment without requiring us to actually change a single thing we do. Now contrast that passive scrolling with an actual interaction. The source states that fortunate are those who get a chance to directly interact with an upright person, learn, and change. Face-to-face interaction is a rare chance, for sure, but the text emphasizes that even a single genuine interaction is enough to shift everything. When you're sitting across from someone whose integrity demands a higher standard, the friction of that interpersonal dynamic creates the spark. You can't just pause a real-life conversation and go back to a bad habit. The live interaction is what breaks through, not the screen. And that brings us to our third and final catalyst. Motivator 3, redirecting experiences. So if self-awareness is internal and an interaction is interpersonal, this third motivator is totally environmental and experiential. It deals directly with aligning a person to life's unexplored purpose. Let's look at how the text defines this. A redirecting experience is an event so moving that it reshapes the entire conditioning of an individual and changes the thought process forever. Now, we aren't just talking about a tough day at the office or a mildly inspiring weekend retreat. We're talking about profound, deeply heavy life events. Think about a major life transition,
a tragic loss, hitting absolute rock bottom, or a sudden massive shift in your environment. These are the concrete realities of a redirecting experience. According to the text, these rare, heavy moments actually go in and permanently rewrite our mental conditioning. They redirect us. They strip away all the noise and align us with a life purpose we hadn't even explored yet. Once this happens, your thought process is permanently altered. You literally cannot go back to being the person you were before, because the entire lens through which you view the world has shattered and been totally replaced.
Okay, before we wrap up, we absolutely have to discuss a major pitfall: the compliance trap. We need to be incredibly careful here. I want to shift gears and issue a really sharp warning based on the source text. We're entering what I like to call the false peak. This is the illusion that trips up so many people, making them think they fundamentally changed when they've actually just set themselves up to slide right back to square one. There's a stark contrast we need to make. On one hand, we have compliance, which is enforced entirely by a fear of consequences. On the other hand, we have true change, which represents an actual shift in your thought processes. The text states explicitly that fear of consequences can enforce compliance, sure, but it does not create any actual change in the thought process. If you're only acting differently because you're terrified of getting in trouble or losing money or facing a penalty, you haven't transformed. You're just wearing a mask. And honestly, think about how exhausting it is to wear that mask every single day. The mental toll of constantly policing your own behavior out of sheer terror is massive, and that exhaustion is exactly why this method always inevitably fails. And here is the brutal reality of that mask. The text lays it out perfectly. The moment the consequence goes away, the behavior shifts right back to the way it was. It's instantaneous, and it is inevitable. Fear-based change is a complete illusion. Just think about how many corporate initiatives totally fall apart the second the boss leaves the room. Or how many crash diets completely fail the moment the wedding or the beach vacation is over. It's an anvil over the head dynamic. Without that looming threat, the old habits return because the mind was never actually reprogrammed through self-awareness, a meaningful interaction, or redirecting experience. Which leads us to our final takeaway: where transformation begins. We've kept things pretty microscopic so far, mostly looking at the individual self. But let's zoom out to a macroscopic, big picture perspective. Where does transformation actually begin when we look at the wider world around us? Well, the text concludes with this really powerful, sweeping statement. Whether your target for transformation is yourself, your entire business organization, your local community, or even massive, sprawling social systems, the rule remains exactly the same. You have to start with the 3 genuine motivators we just explored. You cannot enforce lasting change on a social system purely through the fear of consequences, just like you can't do it to yourself. To change anything, big or small, you need undeniable self-awareness, you need transformative interpersonal interactions, or you need profound, redirecting experiences. That is the true architecture of progress, stretching from a single human mind all the way up to a global society. So I want to leave you with this thought. Look closely at your own life right now. Look at the stubborn habits you're desperately trying to break, or the new reality you're trying to build. Which of those 3 motivators do you need to seek out to actually change? Do you need to finally stop ignoring the data and treat it as a true wake-up call? Do you need to log off the inspirational videos and seek out a real, face-to-face interaction with someone you deeply respect? Or are you waiting for that moving experience to redirect your life's purpose? The mechanics of change are completely in your hands. Now, it's up to you to put them in motion. Keep learning, keep pushing, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.